And we're back, guys. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Stadium Series. There were the 3 games that just had went on, and everything had just gotten wrapped up at Yankee Stadium. 4 games in the inaugural Stadium Series. And there's one on the 25th. There was one on the January 25th at Dodger Stadium. And there's still one to come with the Penguins and the Blackhawks on March 1st. They were all sold to capacity. The average ticket price for the 3 stadium games was $195. So they're pretty expensive seats to go sit out in the cold, especially for the last game at Yankee Stadium, mid-polar vortex. It was cold as heck, and there looked to be like there were a lot of seats that weren't filled. So if you're spending money on those and didn't go due to the polar vortex that kind of stinks. But there was over 10 million plus revenue from sponsorships and other businesses. So it ended up being a really big success. At least the 3 games that have happened already, and the Penguin Blackhawk game already looks to be a big success. I mean, look at the 2 teams that are playing. But I personally it didn't strike me that it was going to be that successful originally. What do you guys think?
I think the main thing which the league is looking at is the amount of revenue and profits which they made. They made $35 million in profits, which for the NHL is something which I'm probably trying to replicate next year, and if so, trying to add maybe a few more games or an extra 1 or 2 at sort of another Michigan stadium where you get 100,000 seats, and if you charge $180 a seat, that's a lot of revenue for the league to make. And I know some people aren't too happy about the fact that it might be taking away from the Winter Classic,
And the Heritage Classic even.
The Heritage Classic too, but I think the league has to look at the revenue. The league has to look after themselves. And if I'm concerned and I'm in the general office as a league, I'm going with more of them.
See, I know the NHL is a business, and they gotta look at their numbers, they gotta look at revenue and whatnot. But I don't know. I love the Winter Classic so much. When they had it in Pittsburgh against the Caps, I mean, that was my freshman year, so I was actually going to school in New Jersey, so I wasn't here for it. But I was home, I was with my friends, and we had a big Winter Classic party, and it was the highlight of the NHL season. And I really feel like the Stadium Series kind of took away from that, because you didn't really hear too much about the Winter Classic this year. And to begin with, even before the Stadium Series, I never heard too much about the Heritage Classic either. So I almost kind of feel like
Canadian thing.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. And don't get me wrong, as a Penguins fan, I'm really excited to watch the outdoor game against Chicago, but I just feel like it's not going to be as special as it was to watch them in the Winter Classic.
How many Penguins fans do you think are honestly going to travel and make the trip to actually get out there to even witness the game?
Probably not a lot. I know a couple of people that have season tickets for the Pens, and Chicago's not that close as far as I know. It's a 6-7 hour drive and it's a flight, but once you put all the prices together, it's an expensive trip for anyone to make. That's why the Heinz Field Winter Classic was just a great opportunity for probably all cities to have. I feel like maybe not each team, but those teams that want to have one have the facilities to host a Winter Classic, and now the ability to host one of these outdoor games, I think should have it. I think all the fans should see a game outside. I feel like it really, that atmosphere which you get, I know everyone being inside a stadium, the atmosphere which you get down at Console is amazing. And if you can add an extra 20,000, 30,000 seats and be outdoors, I feel like it adds something unique, almost like, it's not like pond hockey, but you feel like you're outdoors where hockey was originally played, and it adds something unique to it.
I don't disagree with that. I love watching outdoor hockey. I think that's obviously where the game started. And, I'm excited for the whole aspect of, them playing an outdoor game and, being in the natural environment. But I think that should be left to the Winter and the Heritage Classics. Just because, that was the spectacle of hockey season up until this year. And, I'd be lying if I sit here and say that I'm not going to watch the Stadium Series game with the Penguins. But, I don't know. It just won't be the same for me.
What do you think about the possibility of definitely the outdoor games in Los Angeles and the Sharks possibly playing in one next year and Phoenix and any of those possibilities that really aren't giving you the outdoor hockey experience? It's hot and they're constantly pumping frozen water underneath the ice. There's a lot of time and expense that goes into that, to even keeping the ice and everything put together to have a game. And do you think there are really any really die-hard hockey fans out on the West Coast? I mean, maybe a couple more people jumped on the Kings bandwagon with their Stanley Cup win, but is it really worth it to move any of the Stadium Series games for 2015 out to the West Coast, or have any of those teams involved?
Well, they moved the Super Bowl into the cold this year, so I don't see why they can't move the hockey out into the warm. But it's a different initiative to have it out. Sort of, I'm one of those people that think that hockey is more of a cold weather sport, sort of Canada, up north, northeast, sort of Minnesota, sort of Boston. Those cities, sort of Tampa Bay Lightning, sort of whenever I see them doing well, I think it's unique that they're in a market where the average temperature all year round is about 75 degrees, yet they did well. Sort of the Tampa Bay's had a pretty good team the last couple of years, and over sitting in second at the moment, behind the Boston Bruins in that division. But as far as moving it to sort of Los Angeles and San Jose, it's expensive. But if the fans and if the money's there and if the interest is there, then they should have it. It's just, if there's not enough interest and they end up losing money on it, it's going to be a sort of a dark mark on the league.
No, I agree. I mean, and I think, like, from moving the Super Bowl from a warm weather climate to a cold weather climate, like, football's popular everywhere you go in the United States. It doesn't matter whether you're down south, out west, up north. It's. I mean, I know they say baseball is America's game, but everybody watches football. So I can see where they would jump around and move the Super Bowl from city to city and everything. But and I mean, don't get me wrong. If I lived in California, as a hockey fan, I would want to have a team to root for. I would want to be watching hockey, in California. But I don't know. I just kind of feel like it's weird to watch an outdoor hockey game in the middle of Los Angeles when it's 60 degrees outside. I feel like that, and there's palm trees in the background.
It's just not the same experience. And you have the Winter Classic game between the Penguins and the Sabres, and it's snowing and it's beautiful outside in the winter, and it just doesn't do it for me in a place like Los Angeles where you're not getting that real experience. But I'm just flabbergasted at the success that the Stadium Series had. I personally thought it took away from the Winter Classic. You didn't hear as much about the Winter Classic this year. In the game at Dodger Stadium, the Stadium Series sold more tickets than any Dodgers playoff game and more than any soccer game that had been held there by about 20%.
That really surprised me, because I had heard that too, and those numbers blew my mind. But I honestly think that the reason why that happened was because of the Kings winning the Stanley Cup a few years ago. That is what really kind of.
More than a baseball playoff game, though, like in their home stadium,
yeah.
The Dodger Stadium.
No, I know. That's why I was so surprised, because I mean, the Dodgers are, well, not even just the Dodgers, but all your California baseball teams. I mean, look how many World Series like the Giants have won and stuff too. So I mean, I see California as more of a baseball state than a hockey state, but it almost kind of looks like that's changing. So, although, kind of going off of the whole Stadium Series thing, when they're looking at cities to do next year, one of the top contenders that I heard about was Denver, in Colorado, and that's because, well, they would probably have it at Coors Stadium where the Rockies play, and Coors is one of the main sponsors of the Stadium Series, so I think that would go hand in hand. I think that would be a fantastic marketing decision on the NHL's part.
And I think having the two sort of LA Kings, the Anaheim Ducks and the LA Kings playing, probably targeted 99% of that Los Angeles market as far as hockey fans are concerned.
Whatever market they may have out there.
Yeah, well, obviously it was quite a large market, which surprised. It's a stat which I feel like everyone was amazed at. I'm pretty sure Anaheim, Los Angeles, and the NHL are probably looking at that stat and thinking that they've sort of pulled off a miracle here and maybe hit a gold mine. But yeah, that warm hockey atmosphere. Like, what do the fans wear in this? I know sort of some of the photos showed people in t-shirts, but it's hard to picture.
They call them hockey jerseys for a reason, or sweaters, hockey sweaters for a reason. It's supposed to be cold when you play.
So looking ahead to next year, the Stadium Series 2015, I know we mentioned Denver, but where else do you guys think that could possibly be a good city and a good stadium to host these Stadium Series games?
I feel like that Boston-Montreal talk's very popular. Boston-Montreal series would be amazing. I know Boston could play it at Gillette where the Patriots play. I know they could get about 60,000 capacity to there, and The only thing is you want somewhere that's close to the city. I know Foxborough is about 40-minute train ride out of Boston.
No, I totally agree. I would love to see a Bruins Habs matchup in an outdoor game. I'm actually kind of surprised that they haven't done a Winter Classic between the two of them yet. So I could definitely see that happening. Another city, I mean, I don't know if we're going off of like other cities that they've had Winter Classics in before, but I think DC would be a good one too. So
Who would you have play in DC?
The Caps, and I don't know. I feel like you would probably I would look for a team almost kind of like how like Chicago and Pittsburgh are playing. Like, Pittsburghers are gonna really have to travel if they want to go to this game. So I think maybe like a Caps Nashville game, even just because Nashville doesn't really have a very strong presence right now. You don't really too much about them. Maybe that would help them out if they would do something like that.
One idea which I've seen thrown around is having one in Detroit or somewhere along that US-Canada border where both teams could perhaps travel only sort of an hour or two across the border. So maybe something at maybe not the Detroit Lions Stadium, but probably where the Detroit Tigers play outdoor. Is that Co-America Park?
Mm-hmm.
And having sort of maybe the Red Wings play Toronto or sort of Montreal, sort of one of those Canadian teams that's close by.
I've also seen AT&T Park for the San Francisco Giants. It seats 40,000. A Shark-hosted game. I'm still just not convinced that these West Coast teams like that just need to be in the Stadium Series. I mean, I know Dodger Stadium sold out so well, but I'm just not completely sold on that fact, especially 2 years in a row.
Maybe if they would do the Northwest Coast teams, like if you would do like a Vancouver Calgary or a Vancouver Winnipeg game or something like that. That way you're at least incorporating some of the Western Conference teams into the series.
Almost have like a Canadian Classic and then an American. Maybe you could do that for the outdoor, have two outdoor games as well as the Winter Classic, have an American Classic and then have a Canadian Classic, or something which maybe not goes off the Classic name, but have two rivals that are going to generate a lot of interest.
Well, in a way, I mean, you're kind of like, when you look at the Heritage Classic, that's solely Canadian teams that play in that. And aside from this past year with the Maple Leafs being in the Winter Classic, it pretty much is like the quote-unquote American Classic. So maybe you would split the Stadium Series and have, 2 games with American-based teams and 2 games with Canadian-based teams. It kind of divide it up a little bit better.
Do we have a final consensus on whether the Stadium Series hurts the Heritage and the Winter Classics? I personally think it hurt the Winter Classic, at least. I mean, the Stadium Series was successful in itself, but I really think it took away from the Winter Classic. And what, the Heritage Classic is the day after the March 1st game?
The day after. Personally, as much as you guys are going to hate to hear me say it, I'm for it. It's obviously a success with the fans, and the main thing you're trying to do is build the brand of hockey. And if it builds a brand of hockey, you have more hockey fans, and you have greater rivalries, you have more fan bases. And at the end of the day, if a league doesn't have enough revenue, the league's not going to exist. And it gives them some more money to create maybe another franchise or do some more community work. The extra revenue just provides too much of a positive for the league. And personally, I'd go to a game on the West Coast. I'd love it. T-shirt weather, ice hockey, sounds perfect.
I mean, like, for me, from a marketing perspective, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I don't think they could ever foresee what happened, this year with, ticket sales out on the West Coast. But so if I'm looking at it from a business standpoint, then by all means, yes, like let's do this again in 2015. But from a fan standpoint, I don't know. It's going to be one of those things that it's going to have to grow on me, or we'll see how that goes. But I'm still just a big fan of just having the Heritage and the Winter Classics.
All right, guys, we are going to take another break, and when we come back, we will touch a little bit more on the Olympics. We're going to have the NHL's 3 stars from the last couple games before they went into the Olympic break, and have a little bit of an injury update. Stamkos, hot topic. Koivu, also a hot topic. So we will be right back.